How y'all doing? Good. It's good to see you all. I'm Glenn Griffith, Vice President of Equity, Diversity, Inclusion, and Social Impact here at the DSO. And thank you for joining us for a new series we are launching called How'd I Get Here? Paths to Working in the Performing Arts. And this is just another continuation of our dedication to EDI here at the Symphony. We're very excited about it to be able to launch it during Celebrate Diversity Month, which is in April, as well as Arts Month. And in the short time I've been here, been able to make some wonderful relationships with other members of the arts community. I think Dallas, not being a native from here, we are very blessed and honored to have such a great arts community. The district is amazing, and this program is all about bringing together the arts community, creating an opportunity for us to come together, support each other, celebrate diversity. So today, we're excited to have a conversation with some amazing people. We have represented the Dallas Symphony Orchestra, the Dallas Theater Center, as well as the AT&T Performing Arts Center. So I'm going to get out of the way and give it to the hostess with the mostest, Mr. Carl Baines. Thank you.
Thank you, Glenn. I appreciate that. Thank you guys so much for taking time out and being with us. You could have eaten your lunch anywhere else, but you chose to eat it with us, so we appreciate you guys. So before we get started, I want to introduce these amazing people sitting to my right. We're going to go ahead and get started with Katie McGinnis. I hope I didn't murder your last name.
No, you didn't. Totally fine.
Good. She is the Vice President of Artistic Operations here at the Dallas Symphony. Then we have the amazing Mercedes Fuller. He is the head of Equity, Diversity, Inclusion, Organizational Culture, and People Operations at the Dallas Theater Center. Okay, and definitely we have an amazing gem here. This is Jennifer Perez. She is the Director of Corporate and Foundation Relations at the AT&T Performing Arts Center. Give them a round of applause, please. All right, so we're just gonna go ahead and just dive right in real quick. How y'all doing today?
Really good.
Great.
Good.
Excited to be here.
Good. So, first question that comes to mind when we're talking about EDI and how do we get here is just basically your story, right? What sparked your interest in the performing arts arena or area, and what made you kind of geared to go towards the performing arts and pretty much the theater and art center within itself? I'll start with you, Kate.
You want to start with me? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, God, why you start with me? I guess for me it is kind of an easy answer. It's all thanks to my parents, because at the age of 3, they started me off as a pianist. And my whole life, that's what I did. I studied piano and did various competitions and festivals and master classes all throughout Europe and through the United States. And then all of my degrees, my bachelor is in piano performance, my master's in piano performance, a performance diploma, and almost a doctorate in piano performance. So really that's sort of how I got started in the performing arts world. And then about 10 years ago, it's quite a long story, so I'm not going to share it all with you, but about 10 years ago, I realized that people like me and like us actually exist. And I thought, hey, that could be kind of cool to do. And I thought I could be yet another pianist. And if I did take that route, I would probably be back home in Ireland right now, which would be lovely, but definitely not as exciting as I feel like my life is today, living here in Dallas, working for the Dallas Symphony Orchestra. So, it's me.
Similar to Katie, I give a lot of credit to my parents because of exposure. They did the best that they could with what they had to expose us to opportunities in the arts. So whenever they had a little extra money, we would sit in the symphony as children, or we would go to performances of various kinds. And so I was exposed to the arts. And then, you know, as my parents grew in their careers, they placed us in piano lessons. Now, I am nowhere close to Katie as it pertains to, I will not say that I'm a professional pianist at all, but we did take years of music lessons, music theory, and then there was a community program when we were in high school. I was in high school and my younger sister, she was in elementary school. There was a dance program that was comparable to a debutante program that presented young minority children to society after years of learning the arts and performance through dance. And I was a participant in that program, whereas the young ladies, they were a part of the dance program, and then the guys, we were escorts to the young ladies, and so we had to learn things such as social presence and etiquette. And so that program, I was in it for 4 years, got a scholarship from that, and then I wanted to pay it forward. So years after I graduated high school and returned back to the city in San Antonio, I was a volunteer for that program, and I then became their director of, their assistant director of the program. And so that was exposure, but then I served in a community capacity. And so that's what fostered my love for the arts, just that exposure. And it's so important that we expose children as early as we can to the arts.
It's my turn.
Yes.
So I, like my fellow panelists, will also thank my mom, who always said to me, echa para adelante, which is keep moving forward. I am probably have been in the arts for a little bit less time, but I can tell you how I got into nonprofit, which is what led me here. I would say I now have a college-age student, and when she was around daughter, when she was around 4, someone asked her, oh, hey, what does your dad do? And my husband's a graphic designer, and I was like, oh, daddy's an artist, and what does your mom do? Well, she works on a computer. You know, I was in the entertainment industry, always on a computer, always traveling, but didn't have purpose. I was staying late, breaking my back, doing all the things, but really for what? For an advertising campaign, you know? So I took that as a sign because I wanted my daughter to say that I had some sort of a legacy in her life. So I got into nonprofit. I became her Girl Scout troop leader. Go Girl Scouts. I'm still a troop leader today for my youngest. And sort of climbed the ladder there, but really understood that if I was going to be doing something with my day life, it should be just as meaningful as my volunteer life. And really stepped into the world of very, very large nonprofits, which I will say as a Latina woman, you know, first generation American, there are very few of us the higher up the ladder you go. You can find us in admin, you can find us in programs, but when it comes to fundraising, that's very, very few and far in between. So I made my rounds, a couple of the big ones. I'm originally from New York City. The arts has always been a part of my life. You know, having Lincoln Center in my backyard, you know, Broadway was just a street for us, you know, and made it here to Dallas, and through a series of events, wound up at the AT&T Performing Arts Center, and really, it just made me realize how much the arts had played such a big role in my life, and how important it is to continue to bring new audiences back, especially post-COVID, when people just don't want to go out anymore. And there's nothing like seeing something live and really being in that audience. We just saw Ailey this weekend, right? And just experiencing that, and to bring that to bigger audiences is, you know, again, the goal and the purpose of the mission.
Absolutely. Now, I'm going to stay with you to answer the next question. What are some of the things that came about, or some conflicts, some things that wasn't comfortable to allow you to be in a nonprofit or performing arts area, and how did you actually get through those stumbling blocks or get through those things that allowed you to keep moving forward?
Yeah, sure. So, you know, it's bringing your true authentic self is so important. You know, I'm no spring chicken, so I'm a little bit more comfortable in my skin, you know, but there is something to be said about the criticism and the challenges that we sometimes face when people see me. They're like, well, you might not know that donor. You know, I've had very blatant sort of this implicit kind of undercurrent of because I'm a Latina from Washington Heights, who my parents were immigrants, will she know how to ask this donor for $1 million? Yes, I can. But there's always that understanding of like meets like, and how can we put you forward as the face of this organization? It's something that I faced, not at the center, of course, it's a very supportive environment, but at other places that have sometimes made me feel like, did I make the right decision? But as my mom says, echa para adelante, keep moving forward.
One of the challenges that I faced, especially in being in the arts and being in the role and capacity that I sit in, is that I didn't have too many mentors that looked like me, which meant that there were not a lot of, my access was limited. So I felt throughout my career. And so the way that I've navigated through those challenges is that once I get into a space, I work with intentionality to make sure that I'm the best that I can be every day. And, if I'm given tomorrow, the challenge that I give myself is that I have to do tomorrow better than I did today. But I don't just do that for me. I do it so that I can open a door for someone else and provide access. And I think about all the challenges that I faced and all of the issues that I've had to overcome, and I try to use that as my fuel to help somebody else. So I figured, if I experience some of these issues, somebody else is experiencing the same issue. And, I advocate in the boardroom for other employees, but I try to think through all of those experiences that I face, and then I try to gather knowledge about some of the experiences that other people are facing and some of their challenges, and I take that to the boardroom because my role centers around the people of the organization. I feel that I'm the person that advocates, that has the obligation to advocate for all people and make sure that we provide equal access to opportunities, promotion, and growth in our organization. And that's not just about the employees, but that's also our audiences as well. And it's a shocker for me every Tuesday when I go into the leadership team meetings, and I'm like, man, I still have a job. Because, I challenge so many things, but I feel good. I can sleep well at night because I'm challenging the right things for all people and making sure that we're very fair and equitable in our practices. And so that helps me sleep better at night, but I'm shocked every week when I'm able to walk in and my badge is still working and all those types of things.
Yeah, I feel very lucky. I'm not even sure why I'm actually sitting on this panel, to be honest with you. I feel like I've been super lucky and had great opportunities, so it's hard for me to think of challenges, just because I've always kept kind of a bright spirit about everything. But I guess what was very difficult for me at the start when I moved into management in the performing arts world is to get people to pay attention to my skills as an administrator. Because very much at the start it was like, well, you're a great pianist, but will you be able to go into administration? So I had to sort of push quite a bit at the start. I think the first thing that I did was I applied for a job at the Aspen Music Festival and School, and they took one letter at my resume, which was like, pianist, and they basically said like, absolutely no way. So that summer I got in a car and I drove from Bloomington, which is where I was studying at the time, to Aspen, and I was like, hi, I'm here, tell me what I need to do to be able to work here next summer. And so they said, you just need to get more admin experience. So right after that summer I was actually moving back home to Ireland, because I was a Fulbright scholar at Indiana University in Bloomington, And a part of that deal is that you have to have a 2-year home residency. You don't have your visa, it doesn't last. So I was moving back home to Ireland, and when I got back home to Ireland, I basically told every single festival, box office, concert hall, I was like, put me to work, have me do anything you want. So I worked for this festival in Great Irish Houses, essentially putting addresses and stamps on envelopes. I worked as an usher in the concert hall, I worked in the box office for free. I didn't care. This was all while I was doing my doctorate, so that I could then get back to Aspen the following summer, and I was like, here you go, here's a bit of admin experience. And so did that, got the job at Aspen, then spent 2 summers working at Aspen, which really was sort of, I feel like, where my career in management started. But then I was still in Ireland, and my husband and I, neither of us are from the United States, and we love being here so much. You're all so lucky to be living in this country, and I feel incredibly lucky to be living in this country, and I know sometimes it may not seem like that, but it is incredibly open-minded, forward-thinking. You truly can follow your dreams. And so whenever I was working as an agent for Harrison Parrott in London, I always knew that I wanted to do more in management, and I actually wanted to make an impact and make a difference. But getting a job in the United States as a non-US citizen, again, you got to jump through a lot of hoops. And I was lucky because I did have my husband, boyfriend at the time, but husband, who is Greek, and he and I basically took each other's hands and jumped off the side of a cliff, essentially. Back in 2013, we got a one-way ticket to the US, no jobs, no visas, and we just started knocking on some doors and pushed our way in, essentially. And in order to do that, in order for a US company to take a chance on you, not only do you have to be the best candidate that they're interviewing, you have to be even further than that, because then they have to wait for a couple of months while your visa gets processed, hopefully approved. They have to pay for that to happen. So you really have to be like a standout candidate and persuade them. So I used a lot of Irish jokes to try to get my way in. And I was really pushing that Irish accent as best as I could. And I was lucky, at the Pittsburgh Symphony. Bob Moyer, who was the VP of Artistic Planning there, who was one of my mentors, he had coffee with me, quizzed me on a whole load of things that I didn't have the right answer for. And I got my foot in the door. But it was really trying to persuade people that I can do more than just play the piano. I can do this job in administration quite well, and I'm lucky that I get to be here in the United States doing it.
That's awesome. Now, the amazing thing about all 3 of them telling their stories is, I don't know if you saw it, but the immediate emotion that came in their face as they're telling their story. So they're immediately connecting back to that time, or in a time where she saw her daughter and that face that she gave her, she was like, okay, I don't like that. Or the time where representation did matter, and you was like, okay, I need to be the representation that needs to be seen. And to Katie's experience, to where I'm going to keep on being persistent, I'm going to keep on growing. These are the stories that we likely don't hear, right? So now that we know a little bit about your story, let's segue into what does that look like in your workplace, right? In the workforce, what does that look like when you're getting ready to go into the workplace? How does that allow you to work efficiently and effectively, so that they can see what you're doing and how it's being implemented on a day-to-day basis? Mm-hmm. I'm going to start with you, Mercedes, because one thing in particular that stood out to me in this is that representation, right? Mm-hmm. So in your workplace, in every day, what is and by the way, you are head of EDI over there, how does that come up to the culture of the workplace for you?
So I approach my work every day with the mindset that every employee matters. Every employee is essential. Every employee has stuff. we all have stuff that we have to process before we even can do our work.
Yeah.
And so I keep that in mind. I keep in mind that our employees are human. We have emotion. We feel, we hurt, all of those things. I start from the human side of the work that we do. And just like I have a story, every employee has a story. And so I make it my job to spend the bulk of my time listening to the stories of our employees. And, you know, that was one of my number one priorities. I've been in my position for a year. And when I first started, I committed my first 3 to 6 months just to listen to employees. My first 2 months, I did not make any decisions. I listened. Then, you know, when I moved into month number 3, I started, you know, using the decisions, using the information that I gleaned from employees to start making decisions, creating plans, challenging our leaders, really rallying the support of other people at the leadership table. And I made it a point to demonstrate and share with all of the leaders at the table how listening to their employees would help them perform better. Then I went out and went on a journey to do a full employee engagement survey, where we were able to perform like a 21-point check of the organization through 75 questions, where each question that the employees were asked, they were able to provide commentary on each question. And so many people told me that we would not get, you know, survey responses. People didn't have time to do all of that. But I knew as a human that people want to be heard. And they were just waiting for a way. They were waiting for an avenue. And so what I did was, in addition to going on that survey journey, I created some listening sessions where anyone and everyone throughout the organization can come in and they could talk, they could share, as long as they were respectful. We had guidelines that were set, and every leader in the room, I challenged them in every listening session, do not say a word. Listen. You can respond at another time, but our number one job, our number one task is to hear the employees. And I started to see those listening sessions get packed out because people had something to say. And so I wanted to build a culture of trust, and that took time because everyone came with all of their past experiences. And so the summation of everything that I'm saying is that we have to listen, we have to be empathetic, we have to consistently assess what's going on in our organizations, you know, big picture and departmentally. But then we have to be ready with the right resources. And then we have to make sure that we convey over to our employees that they're necessary and that this work that we're doing as far as listening and learning from our employees is necessary. When you put all that together, and I just broke that into an acronym, LEARN, when you learn about the employees and you learn about their needs and their concerns, you can do the work will follow, but you have to show your people that they're valued.
Absolutely. Now, Katie, let's talk about when you're getting ready for a season, right? How does EDI come into play for you when you're going out and you're getting ready for a season?
Yeah, I mean, it plays a huge part in programming for me and for my entire team. I mean, I have some of my team members with me here as well. I mean, I think it's constantly in our minds, but that was not the case 10 years ago, truthfully. You know, I have seen a huge change. 10 years ago, I was working for the Pittsburgh Symphony Orchestra, and I was doing programming there, and that was absolutely not the case, which is amazing. I think right around the pandemic is when myself and a lot of my counterparts, artistic administrators with other orchestras, finally took a breath during the pandemic. And I think we all talked to each other a lot about this, that we were sort of going on automatic pilot when we were programming. You know, you kind of sit and you're like, okay, what's the concerto going to be? What's the symphony going to be? Okay, let's stick an overture on the top. And you were going on automatic pilot the whole time. And then the pandemic hit, and so much changed with society and the social climate. And it forced us all to take a beat and really look at ourselves and say, okay, what are we doing in the arts actually? What message are we trying to send here? Are we sending any message? And truthfully, I think we weren't. And then we took that time to really pay attention, and every season that we were putting together, and I'm grateful to say that I feel like I try to be included in that every single season I look at it and I say, what am I saying and what am I showcasing that our orchestra can do through the composers, through the artists, through how we put a program together, what message is it sending? And now, as I'm planning the 24-25 season, for the first time since, let's say, 2019, 2020, and certainly for the first time since I started in the orchestra side of this business in 2013, I feel like it's becoming slightly organic, and I can't wait until that day that I don't have to sit down and look at the season and say, do I have enough diversity in my season? Are there enough female conductors? Are there enough BIPOC artists? Are there enough female composers? I can't wait for the day, and I feel like we're getting there. We've a long way to go, but we're getting there where it's just organically built into the season, and I think it's been amazing for the arts because it's stopped being boring, quite frankly. And we're no longer on automatic pilot. You know, if the programmers are on automatic pilot, my God, can you imagine what the audience must have been feeling like? So it's a really good thing, and I hope it's going to just get more and more organic and normal.
Awesome. Now, Jen, I wanted to see if you can speak from a workplace environment and how these initiatives are being implemented from your perspective, and how to process these initiatives on a day-to-day or weekly or monthly scale from your perspective.
Yeah, so I am the chair of the IDEA task force at the AT&T Performing Arts Center. It was developed in 2020. You know, everybody had an awakening. I think many of us saw that as a long time coming, but we'll take it for what it is, right? So we had a task force that was really dedicated to promoting inclusivity, diversity, equity, and accessibility at the center. I was made chair this past January, and really my first order of business was, we're no longer a task force. We're gonna codify this, and we're gonna make this a committee, or develop it to be something more, because task force is like, once you're done with the job, you're done. And the job of diversity, equity, inclusion, access, and all of the letters is never done. We're always working and moving it forward. So at the center, one of our first, roles is we did a survey, and it was really to compare it to the survey we had done in 2020. Surveying people is always great. But really, so there had been a lot of turnover, and a lot of change had come to the center. So it was almost a little bit apples to oranges, but we still saw that there were gaps. And now we're in the process of filling those gaps. And how do you do that? It is, providing training. If you're a woman in a meeting and you're not being heard, then we need to offer some inclusivity training, and not just for the men, but for everybody, because it's not, this was a person who said it, but who else is feeling it, right? And really developing that trust amongst all levels. We are a little bit divided because we're in two different buildings. And so sometimes we miss out on seeing eye to eye because we're not physically in the same space. So it's also developing those opportunities to bring the groups together and not in a work setting. I got the opportunity to go with the Mosaic group to see Native Gardens. And I thought, wow, this is great. This wasn't during the workday. This wasn't forced. It was an invitation. And now we're planning similar opportunities for our employees and staff, and really driving forward the work of equity, inclusion, and diversity in an organic way where we are teaching and learning ourselves, and then sharing amongst each other.
Awesome. So now that we understand that you guys are, implementing it through programming, through surveying, and through organic ways of connecting with people, ideally enough, what do you think that will be the next frontier or the next thing that will allow us to kind of make it organic, to make it this thing that it's not just, okay, we're seeing a program and we have to line item a couple of things to incorporate things that should be normalized, right? So from that perspective, and I'll come back to you, what in your words will be the way to normalize this?
Well, I think has to be constant exposure. It's not the DEI thing that was here last year or last month. It's consistent and constant conversation, and also a lot of sharing and understanding that diversity comes in all facets. May is AAPI month, but it's also Mental Health Awareness Month. So how do we talk about those things and give them and elevate them to a level of importance where people take them and want to learn more about it, and also how those things impact our communities and ourselves as employees and as colleagues. And then from a programming perspective, it is always striving to take the voice one step further, right? Great that you have an event that targets Latinos, right? Well, is your advertising in Spanish? Are your invitations in Spanish? When you're saying diversity of the Latino audience, is it Mexican, Colombian, Puerto Rican, Dominican? Like, how far does that? It's just taking that one step further, and then people, I think there's a natural awakening that comes with when you experience something, right? And the more you get to experience it, the more organic it becomes, because that's what you turn to accept. You wanna expect this level of diversity around you, so that when you don't see it, you're like, that's weird. Like, why don't I see that? Yeah. That's where we want to get to, is when you don't see it, is when you say, that's the weird part of it.
I believe that, similar to Jen, and I love your commentary, we have to take action daily. And, our organizations that we serve, our employees, our community, they have to see us taking action daily. We can't just talk about it. We have to be about it, and we have to make sure that it's evident. Someone was asking me, what are some of the steps that we can take to diversify our audience, or what steps can we take to make sure that our audience is aware of the diversity work that we're doing? And I said, the biggest thing that we have to do is change the way that we treat people. And, diversity, I shouldn't have to tell them all of the strides that we're making and all of the actions that we're taking. They should feel it when they come into our building. They should feel it in the treatment. They should feel it in, when they're looking at the cast of a production, they should be able to see it. When they're looking around the audience, they should be able to see people from all races, genders, creeds, and be able to partake in what we do together with so many people from different backgrounds. So we have to get to the point, we have to get away from just solely talking about it, and we have to move our diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts from the back burner and make it a consistent part of what we do. It should be, an essential part of our being. It should be how we show up. So we really have to work at showing up better daily and taking those consistent actions.
I think from the symphony orchestra world, and how programming can help. Right now, you look at programming, and actually programming is sort of the first easy step to take with this, actually.
Yeah.
But it still has, as I said, it still has a long way to go, and especially until it becomes organic and to be normal, but I think one of the biggest hurdles that we face as a nonprofit organization, and certainly in the symphony world as a classical music organization, is as soon as I program too elaborately, in whatever way that means, because diversity is in a lot of different shapes and forms.
Right.
As soon as I go too elaborate, then I have challenges for our marketing department. Then I have challenges for our development department, because we rely on funders who do want to come in and just see Beethoven 5 and Tchaikovsky 5. And we have people who in the marketing department are targeting, and they want to see Mendelssohn Violin Concerto on the front cover of it. And they're going to come and see Mendelssohn Violin Concerto, and if I put a piece by Florence Price at the top, I want it to get to a point that the audience isn't saying, okay, well, it's just 10 minutes. You know, it's 10 minutes, and then I'm going to get Mendelssohn Violin Concerto. We are a very slow industry in terms of change. It takes years to get a symphony orchestra to get out of the suits, the penguin suits, I call them. You know, it takes years and years and years to make that simple change. And even now, we still have patrons who are unhappy about the fact that they're no longer in their tuxes. I mean, it's slow to have change, and we've got a long way to go, and that is one of the biggest hurdles that we have to keep at it every day, as you say. And I also think that it's my responsibility and my team's responsibility that when we do programming and when we bring in artists, that they are outstanding, so that the patrons then say, oh wow, I didn't think I was gonna like that. You know, for example, we just had that recently with Gabriela Ortiz. Incredible composer. Her piece Anthropoli, I knew everyone was gonna love, but leading up to it, I had donors and patrons and board members being like, oh, I don't know if I'm gonna like this, I don't know if I'm gonna like it, and I was like, please trust me, please trust me. And they were coming for Scheherazade in the second half, of course, which was amazing. But first half, Gabriela Ortiz and Gabriela Montero, and they loved it. And we need to make sure that we do that as often, so that they build that trust with us, and eventually we can make it the norm.
Awesome, awesome. Now, I want to go ahead and shift a little bit, because now we're getting to the time where it's going to allow question and answer, right? But most importantly, I want to go back to your individual journeys, right? So think of yourself, you know, a couple of years ago. You're going through this journey, you're going through this process. What are some of those things that if you would have changed them, or would have assisted you, or some of those things that you would tell a younger you that you can do to better, you know, your journey, or to help someone else's journey? I'll start with Kate.
Oh gosh. Yeah, I think this is probably not going to be a very popular answer, but it is an honest answer. I think there's a lot of people that reach out to me and sort of look to have me be a mentor, which is like, I'm not sure I would be a good mentor. But, you know, there's a lot of younger professionals that ask for advice, and I think right now, social media and the climate is telling young professionals, you've got to be brave, and you've got to get in there, and you've got to slam your fist on the table and demand, and you deserve this, and you should get it. And as I said at the start, this is probably not going to be the most popular answer, but actually I try to encourage them not to do that. You know, not every person that you speak to is going to be a mountain that you have to climb. You know, they might actually be a kind person that wants to give you a chance. So you don't have to come flying into the office and say, damn you, I deserve this job. Because if somebody came and did that to me, I would be like, wow, no you don't, out you go. And I think I'm a nice person and would give people a chance. So I try to tell people, yes, be courageous, yes, be confident, yes, try to make sure that you're determined and you work hard, but realize that there are a lot of people out there that are willing to help you, and sometimes you need to just be willing to do the work and take the advice, and before you know it, it'll pay off, I think.
What about you, Jen?
So sometimes there's an undercurrent of like, oh, that's not for you. And I think that taking it and saying, no, it is. And moving forward from that point is incredibly important because, I mean, there were a couple of times where, it seemed in my career, like, oh, well, that's you're not going to be able to do that, and not taking that personally, understanding that sometimes that criticism comes from a point of, of someone's own self-belief system, and that sometimes that doesn't have anything to do with me, that I can still move forward the way that I want to move forward regardless. And then in terms of like advice, that persistence is key, and also learning how to read the room. To that point, it's
That's so true.
I think people have forgotten sort of that art of being in a room and understanding, when are you loud, when are you soft, when are you pushing, when are you taking, when, and learning to pull those levers to your favor.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's it.
I intentionally made you last because I want you to, you're more than what you do. Would you agree with that?
I would have to say yes.
Okay, so.
Which is the same for you, Carl, by the way.
Right.
So the reason why I made you, you're not in trouble. But I really want you to also answer the question, but talk a little bit more on purpose, because I think outside of what we do is something that is key for most people don't understand, right? All they see you is just for what you do. Oh, you come to work. Oh, this is you. And I think this is kind of to what Katie is saying, is that we're more than who we are standing up here at this panel. But at the same time, we have a little bit more in us that we sometimes don't want to share, and we don't know how to share. We know how to, the room is telling us no. But I really want you to kind of go into purpose, right? What that means for you. So the question, what would you tell the person that's coming in, or the next person, or your younger self? And then two, let's talk about purpose for a little bit.
So I'll try to weave all of that together. When I think about purpose, I think about the moment that you discover your purpose is that same moment that you discover your power. And when you discover your power, you can be successful in every area or any area that you determine that you want to be successful in. But you have to understand your purpose. You have to understand your reason for existence and who you are purposed to serve. And so in discovering that, what I had to deal with throughout the years was a whole lot of rejection. And so to my younger self now on this side, I would tell my younger self, for every no that you received, for every opportunity that you were turned down for, if you believe that there was something in that for you and you didn't get it through the opportunity or the job that you applied for or the thing that you wanted, if you didn't get it, create it. And so, I wear so many hats because I was rejected in so many areas. And so I created different opportunities along the way until I got to the places where I wanted to go. And for example, my job, the very job that I have now, I was rejected for about 10 years for that same exact position because, there were different chapters where you're too young, you're not experienced enough. But what people don't know is back when I was in undergrad, DE&I was so new. But our university was one of the first universities where I saw that there was a vice president of equity and diversity. And so I knew back in 2004 that I wanted to be a diversity officer. And so I signed up to work in that office, and I was a office assistant, and I was writing the vice president's speeches, writing her presentations, coaching her on her presentations, going with her to her presentations, sliding sticky notes. In essence, I think back, she was grooming me to be that officer. And, you know, I understood mentorship and the essence of mentorship back then. And I've always identified a mentor in every avenue I want to travel down, every position that I desire to have, every goal. I always identify a mentor in those spaces. And I have this thing where I like to imitate people. I imitate my mentors. And so when I'm in meetings now, I'm acting like them. You know, I'm repeating the things that I heard them say, but I used all of that to create what I thought was, you know, opportunities for me, but really and truly is opportunities for other people, because everywhere that I've left, I tried to make sure I identified the next person. And I always try to make recommendations on who should come and fill these spaces and fill these gaps. So if it's not there, if the door was closed, create it. But then always be looking out for who's next.
Awesome. With that, let's go into questions. Anyone have any questions at this time? Don't be bashful. Okay.
Hello. I was just going to ask, as leaders in the arts, like what helps you keep a fresh perspective, things like that, to just keep your inspiration, whether that's something you like to do in Dallas, or maybe it's not related to your field, or online resources, but I always love to hear like how leaders can kind of keep that inspiration going.
It's an easy one for me. No question, my team. That definitely keeps me fresh, because they bring amazing ideas every single day from all parts of their lives. Yeah, it's definitely my team that keeps me fresh.
I would say this, you know, not only is it the great creative people that we get to work with, but I shadow them. You know, I get lost in the work that we do. And I think as a consumer, I think as a patron, so I'm a customer, but then, you know, I find myself getting lost in our building. I'll spend days and a few hours, you know, through the course of my week, like going to our costume shop, just walking around saying, hey, show me the costume for this character. Show me what you're doing. Show me how you're making it. And, you know, during shows, sometimes I'll give up my ticket to go and sit in our orchestra pit to watch, you know, our band play. I'll sometimes watch from behind the stage and just become immersed in the art form in the place where I serve, and just never lose that consumer's mindset, because you'll fall in love with the art form even more, but then you'll also be able to address the needs of your people and your audiences.
Well, you know, my team for sure. Oh, he's sitting right there, so it makes a lot of sense for me to say something. But it's also, where else are you a leader? You know, leadership in the arts is just one facet of, you know, how I lead in my life. I'm on various, you know, committees, and I think being exposed to different people doing different things is so important, because it really is helpful, you know, for creativity. And I also read books, which I think is something that, you know, people that's becoming a lost art form. You know, we're so busy scrolling that sometimes we forget to actually pick up a book in our hands.
Yep.
And more often than not, I'm reading something that's, you know, that's more eye-opening. Like, I'm not a big fiction reader, but really having a good cadre of books. And yes, sometimes I've got 3 half-started books.
Yep.
But then I just cycle through them. It's not a big deal. But really, the whole goal is really to take our minds and expand them in different directions, and to always create. Always be creating, even if it's from cooking a meal, to doing something artistic, to just to singing a song. Always have a moment where you yourself are in that seat and you are creating as well, no matter how bad you sing.
Thanks. Thank y'all so much for speaking with us today. I've gleaned a lot of all of y'all's comments. Something you had said in particular was about the difficulty in both, pardon me, bringing in new kinds of performances and, having your audiences trust you that they're going to like it and stuff like that. But then you'd also mentioned the other element of, changing procedures and policies, like not wearing their suit as much or other things like that. So how do you find the balance there? Like, what's the tightrope?
Yeah, it's, I think we found here at DSO, you have to have patience, and you have to have an amazing leader at the top, and we're really lucky that we do. Kim Knoll to me is incredible. Nothing gets in her way, to a scary point, actually, sometimes. But once you have a leader who's brave and open-minded and kind of just very much willing to push through, you can do it. But even with that, you have to have patience to get people to realize that change is good in any industry. Human nature, we don't like change, we like familiarity. And so remembering what the arts is supposed to be doing for us, I think that's our responsibility, to try to remind them of that and then patiently wait while they get there. And our job is supposed to be a few clicks ahead of them anyway. That's what we specialize in. But yeah, absolute patience to build that trust.
Hi, my name is Amy Rester, and I'm part of the DSOYP, among other things that I volunteer with here. And I wanted to ask you a question. You mentioned, if there isn't, you deal with rejection, and then you create what you want. That's not my particular story, but I wanted to ask you, how do you present what you want to create to an organization and have them buy into what you have from the outside?
Absolutely. That's an amazing question. When you are preparing to present something to an organization or a group, and the first thing that I would say is you have to believe in it more than anybody else will. And, Jennifer said something that was so critical and so important, is learning how to read the room. I would say learn how to read the room and learn how to read different spaces in the organization. But in order to be able to successfully read an atmosphere, you have to do your research. And in doing your research, you'll be able to identify the gaps that that organization has. You'll be able to identify some of those needs. And so what you should do is prepare your proposal, your plan, but get some allies with you and allow those allies to serve as your thought partners. But then I mentioned earlier my mentors. In every space that I've been in, I'm able to call back to my mentors, because one thing that's so critical, no matter how far you move in your career, no matter how you advance, you never want to burn bridges. Because the thing is, although I left mentors at other places, they can still support me wherever I go. So I call back to those people and I say, hey, this is something that I'm getting ready to present. This is something that I'm getting ready to propose. What do you advise? How should I approach this? Can I practice my presentation with you? And can you critique me and be open to that criticism? And your allies that you've built in the place where you are, then you use them again as thought partners, but then also practice those approaches and go with those people You know, if they're willing, if they're brave, allow them to be your allies in those spaces where you're getting ready to present your ideas. Share some of that space. And I think that if you believe in it, if you have your good ally base, sky's the limit. And never give up on that thing that you believe in. Never give up, because a no doesn't necessarily mean, you know, completely flat out no. It could be a simple not now. It could mean that, you know, we don't have the budget for it now. But if somebody tells me, and this has happened, if somebody tells me we don't have the budget for it right now, guess what? I'm learning how to read the budget, because the second I see that we have $5 extra, I'm presenting my idea again. So, you know, in addition to that ally base, you know, learning those new skills. So the things that they tell me I don't have budget for, well, now I know how to read the budget. But I went out in that time that I was waiting for that thing to happen. I went out to try to figure out how to expand my knowledge base and my repertoire, so that next time when I present again, I'm stronger than what I was the last time. So always believe in your vision.
Nice.
Yeah.
Thank you guys so much. This has been great. You've all kind of talked about moving your agendas, for lack of a better word, forward alongside your teams, other leaders, sometimes audience members. Can you speak a little bit about working with the artists and what that looks like? Have you experienced challenges with them, or even demands, I'm sure?
So that's for you two, because I don't work as much with the artists.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely face challenges with the artists. It's getting better, and it definitely, I hate to say this, but it's the older generation that are tricky when it comes to programming. They do kind of want to come in and just do the same old, especially if they want to show themselves off with the orchestra, and that's their mission. So it's a challenge, but industry is changing that. Those people are slowly filtering out. And I know as well, managers nowadays as well, they realize that somebody like me, it's my job to pick, obviously with our music director, Fabio Luisi, but with Fabio and I, it's his and my job to pick who gets on the podium to conduct the orchestra and who is the soloist. The managers know that, and I am more inclined to call on artists that are going to be more open-minded about what we do in that program than the ones who aren't. And they want that commission. So they are slowly getting their artists to realize you've got to be more flexible. You know, you've got to be more open-minded about what it is that you're going to conduct, or even just simply open-minded about saying hi to the audience at the top of the concert or coming to an event afterwards. You know, the managers are definitely helping, because they're realizing that people like me are looking for artists that'll do that. And that's back to your point of just, we got to keep persisting, we got to keep doing it, keep trying, keep pushing it every single year until it's a real change.
You know, and I agree with everything that Katie just shared. One of my catchphrases that I said in a meeting one day, and I was talking to some of our leaders, but this applied to my approach to how I handle our artists at our theater. You know, I said, I would much rather be your ally. Don't make me your enemy. And I made my intentions known from the very beginning. And so in order to be able to serve the artist and serve our community, I needed to understand what they do. And they needed to see that I had a genuine interest in what they do. So one of the first things that I did 3 months into the job, I auditioned for a performance. And I went through a 2-month rehearsal process. I acted in every show. And I learned the ins and outs, not only of my job, but their job. And so they saw something different. They saw someone who, would work in the office 8 hours and then go into rehearsal for 4 hours after work. And they saw that I was genuinely interested in what they did, and I advocated for them, but I had to understand the ins and outs of their jobs. It was the coolest thing ever. And I kind of scared my boss because he said, well, you did a great job in the show. How do you feel? I said, well, I don't know which one I want to do more, either my day job or do that. But I think the actors, we were able to build a great rapport. And so now I can go to them and they can come to me because that trust was built. That trust. So, find ways to earn that trust.
Yeah, and the AT&T Performing Arts Center is just a little bit different in that we are not a producer. But we do have a programming department, and since our new CEO came on board about 6 or 7 months ago, really have an eye towards diversifying our program and our programming. And I think that that's where we're going to start to move the needle, is bringing talent to the center, that truly represents not only our community, but also the world at large. And that is how we're going to move the needle with bringing diverse audiences. Yep. But it is also communicating all of that and making sure that everybody knows that, that Keb Mo is going to be here at the Windspear, which, a lot of people wouldn't have known unless we're actively having that conversation.
All right. Well, it's amazing hearing your stories and hearing EDI and hearing all the things that encompass basically what you do on a daily basis. One thing that stuck out to me was clear is that people don't do what you say. People do what you do. And I think you guys have done such an amazing job. And even if you don't want to be that mentor or that person that wants to be in the forefront, or the ability to have a person to follow you and be your mentee, you've definitely have done the work to be so. So with that, I'm so grateful to be a part of this process, be a part of how did they get here. And with that, guys, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for spending your lunch with us. You didn't save us any, so thank you for that. But with that, guys, have a great day and come back on the next time.
Thank you all so much. Thank you all.